Your brain is secretly spending your money, and you have absolutely no idea it's happening. Right now, somewhere deep in your skull, emotions are making financial decisions for you. Not logic, not math, feelings. And the craziest part? Science has the receipts. Welcome to Oddly Logical. Today we're breaking down 10 emotions that hijack your wallet. And trust me, by the end of this, you're going to want to audit every purchase you've made this month. Let's start with the big one. Section Fear. Emotion. Number 1, fear. Here's something wild. In 2008, during the financial crisis, millions of people panic sold their investments at the exact worst moment. They lost billions, collectively. And the reason wasn't stupidity, it was fear. Here's what your brain does when it detects a financial threat. Your amygdala, the ancient alarm system in your brain, fires up, and it doesn't care about your retirement fund, it just wants you to survive. So it screams, get out, get out, get out. The problem? The stock market isn't a lion. But your amygdala doesn't know that. Researchers at Caltech actually found that people with amygdala damage made more rational financial decisions during market crashes. Think about that. The part of your brain designed to protect you was actually the thing destroying your wealth. Fear doesn't just hit during crashes either. It shows up when you're too scared to negotiate your salary, too scared to invest, too scared to start that side business. Fear is the most expensive emotion you'll ever feel. Section Excitement. Emotion 2, excitement. Okay, flip side. You know that feeling when you spot a sale? That little electric buzz? That's dopamine, and it's basically your brain's reward chemical going into overdrive. Here's the insane part. Studies show that the anticipation of buying something activates more dopamine than the purchase itself, which means the high is in the scrolling, the adding to cart, not the actual thing. Retailers know this. That's why flash sales exist. Limited time offers, countdown timers. They're not selling you a product. They're selling you a dopamine spike. And once that spike hits, your prefrontal cortex, the rational decision-making part, gets temporarily overridden. You're not thinking, you're feeling. And feelings buy things logic would never approve. Section Shame. Emotion 3, shame. This one is sneaky, really sneaky. Shame makes people do two completely opposite things with money. Some people overspend to hide it, buying nice things to prove they're doing fine. Others under-earn on purpose because deep down, they don't believe they deserve more. Brené Brown's research showed that shame is the emotion most correlated with self-destructive behavior. And financial self-destruction? That's one of the biggest. Here's the pattern. You feel ashamed about money. You avoid looking at your bank account. You have no idea what's happening. You make worse decisions, more shame. It's a loop, a very expensive loop. The antidote, by the way, is just looking, opening the app, seeing the number. Shame loses power when you shine a light on it. Section Envy. Emotion 4, envy. Oh, this one's juicy. There's a famous study where participants were offered money, say $50, but then told that someone else in the experiment got $100. Suddenly, the $50 felt like a loss. Same amount of money. Completely different emotional response. This is called social comparison bias. And it's the engine behind keeping up with the Joneses. Here's what's wild. Research from the University of Michigan found that people's happiness with their income depended more on how it compared to their neighbors than on the actual amount. Someone earning $80,000 a year in a neighborhood of $60,000 earners felt richer than someone making $100,000 surrounded by millionaires. Social media turbocharges this. You're not comparing yourself to your neighbor anymore. You're comparing yourself to the highlight reel of 10,000 strangers. And your brain processes every single one of those comparisons as a threat. Envy doesn't just make you feel bad. It makes you spend money you don't have to impress people you don't like, to fill a hole that can't be filled with stuff. Section Guilt. Emotion 5, guilt. Guilt is envy's quieter cousin, and it hits differently. Research shows that when people feel guilty about anything, not just money, they tend to make more self-punishing financial decisions. They undercharge for their work. They give away more than they can afford. They say yes when they should say no. There's even a concept called financial martyrdom, where people sacrifice their own financial stability to avoid feeling selfish. Sound familiar? But here's the twist. Guilt can also motivate. Studies in behavioral economics show that moderate guilt, like feeling bad about impulse spending, can trigger better long-term decisions. It's guilt without shame. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am wrong. One leads to correction, the other leads to a spiral. The key is catching which kind you're feeling. Section: Nostalgia. Emotion 6. Nostalgia. Okay, I promise this one will make you look at every commercial differently forever. Nostalgia makes you spend more. Full stop. Scientifically proven, a study published in the Journal of Consumer Research found that when people felt nostalgic, they were willing to pay significantly more for products. Why? Because nostalgia literally reduces your sense of pain of paying. The emotion buffers the financial sting. That's why every car commercial plays a 1980s song. Why fast food chains bring back classic menu items. Why limited edition childhood cereals sell out in hours. They're not selling food, they're selling a feeling. And feelings cost extra. Also wild, researchers found nostalgia makes people more generous, more likely to donate, tip bigger, pay a premium. Because in a nostalgic state, money feels less real. Section: Anxiety. Emotion 7. Anxiety. Here's where it gets clinically interesting. Anxiety and fear are related but different. Fear is about a specific threat. Anxiety is that vague, free-floating dread about everything. And it does two specific things to your finances. First, it causes avoidance. Anxious people are statistically less likely to invest, less likely to open financial statements, less likely to make long-term financial plans. Because planning means confronting uncertainty, and uncertainty feeds anxiety, so you just don't. Second, and this one's counterintuitive, anxiety can cause overspending as a coping mechanism. It's called retail therapy, and it actually works. Briefly, shopping gives you the illusion of control. You made a choice. You got something. For about 11 minutes, the anxiety quiets. Then the credit card statement arrives, and the anxiety doubles. Researchers at Cambridge found that financial anxiety and financial behavior form a feedback loop so tight that it's almost impossible to change one without addressing the other. You can't budget your way out of anxiety. You have to treat both. Section: Overconfidence. Emotion 8. Overconfidence. All right, this is the one that hits different if you've ever said, I know what I'm doing, right before losing money. Overconfidence is the most studied bias in all of behavioral finance, and for good reason. A landmark study found that 88% of drivers think they're above average drivers. That's mathematically impossible, and humans do the same thing with investing. The Dunning-Kruger effect meets your portfolio. People who know a little about stocks, they trade the most, and they lose the most. Expert investors actually trade less because they understand how much they don't know. Here's the painful part. Overconfidence is worst when you've just had a win, a few lucky trades, a business deal that worked out. Your brain interprets luck as skill. Dopamine floods in, and suddenly you're making bigger bets with worse odds because your emotional state says you're on a roll. Spoiler, you're not on a roll. You got lucky, and the market doesn't care about your feeling. Section: Sadness. Emotion 9. Sadness. Okay, this one has a really specific, strange finding that I need you to know about. A Harvard study gave participants either a sad video or a neutral video to watch, then they played a trading game. The sad group paid significantly more for the same items and sold their items for significantly less. The researchers called it the misery is not miserly effect. Sadness doesn't make you careful with money. It makes you desperate to change your current state. You pay more to acquire things. You accept less to get rid of things. You just want things to be different. This is why grief shopping is real. Why breakups lead to expensive haircuts and new wardrobes. Why funerals are followed by retail therapy. Sadness is a remarkably powerful spending trigger, and industries absolutely know this. And the digital world has figured out how to algorithmically serve you sad content right before showing you ads. Not an accident. Section: Hope. Emotion 10. Hope. Save the best for last, right? Hope is the most financially powerful emotion of all, and it cuts both ways, sharper than anything else on this list. On the positive side, hope is what makes people invest, start businesses, negotiate raises, take calculated risks. Without hope, there's no wealth creation. Full stop. But hope without information is just wishful thinking with a credit card. Lottery tickets, get-rich-quick schemes, crypto projects with no fundamentals, MLM companies, they all run on hope. And the reason hope is so dangerous is that it bypasses your risk assessment entirely. A study from the University of Wisconsin found that simply priming people with hopeful thinking made them rate risky investments as safer. Same investment, different emotional state, completely different risk perception. And here's the gut punch. The less financial control people feel, the more hope-driven their decisions become. It's a survival mechanism. When your back is against the wall, hope feels like a strategy. But it's not. So what's the takeaway from all 10 of these? Here's the thing. You can't eliminate emotions from financial decisions. Researchers have actually studied people with damage to their emotional processing centers, and they make terrible financial decisions too. You need emotion. The goal isn't emotionless. The goal is emotionally aware. The single most powerful financial habit science has identified: creating a pause between the emotional impulse and the financial action, even just a few seconds. That pause is where your prefrontal cortex catches up to your amygdala. Sleep on big purchases. Don't invest when you're euphoric. Don't sell when you're panicking. Open your bank account even when it scares you. And stop comparing your financial situation to someone else's highlight reel. Your money decisions are made by a human brain, an ancient, emotional, beautifully irrational human brain. The more you understand it, the less it can pick your pocket. If this broke your brain a little, good. That means something clicked. Hit subscribe because next week we're covering why your brain physically cannot think about the future and how that explains basically every financial mistake you've ever made. See you then.